Begin the program that begins on page 2. Before we begin the program that starts on page 2, please rise. San Diego. Clouds are gathering, shadows lengthening. What should be anathema is becoming commonplace. It wears. It wears on the heart. It wears on the soul. Memory is on alert. We come together, family, friends, not yet friends, community. We reflect on the terrors we've seen. Reflexively, we tense at the thought of terrors to come. Let us pause for a moment to remember. Let us pause for a moment to reflect. Let us pause for a moment to resolve that however we can help, we will help. However we need to raise our voices, we will do so. And that whatever we do, we will not hide. Let us pause for a moment to remember. Let us pause for a moment to reflect. Let us pause a moment to resolve. Please remain standing for the honor guard.
I got it. Getting old. Ladies and gentlemen, the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free? And home of the brave.
Now you put the flags away.
Please be seated. Rabbi Shalom Ever.
We remember. We must remember the atrocities committed against our people. The murder of 6 million men, women, and children. We must remember the communities, synagogues, ideas, dreams, vision, hope, and faith that died along with our slaughtered brethren. By remembering, we keep our people alive. By remembering, we demonstrate our resilience as a people. By remembering, we give honor to the victims of the Holocaust. We fulfill one of the highest mitzvot, to care and pray for the dead. By voicing our sadness and anger at the atrocities our innocent brethren endured, we call ourselves and others to action. By voicing our opposition to hatred, we stand against prejudice and anti-Semitism. By acting in memory of those murdered, we begin to heal the brokenness of our world and to create a new beginning. The poem, "Unto Every Person There Is a Name," immortalizes the names of those stripped of their identities and slaughtered, and gives us the opportunity to complete the work of Tikkun Olam.
Unto every person there is a name bestowed upon him by God and given to him by his parents.
Unto every person there is a name, accorded him by his stature and type of smile and style of dress.
Unto every person there is a name conferred by the mountains and the walls which surround him.
Unto every person there is a name, granted him by fortune's wheel, or that which neighbors call him.
Unto every person there is a name assigned him by his failings or contributed by his yearnings.
Unto every person there is a name, given to him by his enemies or by his love.
Unto every person there is a name derived from his celebrations and his occupation.
Unto every person there is a name, presented him by the seasons and his blindness.
Unto every person there is a name which he receives from the sea and is given to him by his death.
Survivors honored: Donald Berkman, Bertha Borowick, Inga Fixler, Sophia Follis, George Geyer, Miriam Greenman, Adele Jochelson, Nella Jaffe, Sonia Kaplan, Samuel Kaufman, Molly Keaton, Burl Lazarus, Morris Markovsky, Laura Oberlender, Claire Persky, Betty Simon, Rosalie Simon, Sydney Simon, Rose Steinberg, Doris Weis, Murray Weis, Ruth Zinman.
Candles we light wherever we are, candles for Hanukkah, candles for Shabbat, candles for Havdalah, braided like a challah, or candles for pure delight. So many, many candles, all kinds of shapes, all kinds of colors.
All of them joy. Only one candle is right, to remember someone who died. A candle for the soul, a candles that we light, in silence and in honor, 6 candles, a memorial to the myriads who are gone, 6 million, all of them candles of sorrow.
Avrohom, God of justice and mercy, at this annual solemn gathering, our joint earnest prayers and meditation invariably bring into personal focus, my own personal focus, the unfinished life of my own Jewish namesake, Eliezer Geller, one of the dozen teen block captains who were martyred in the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. His handsome, high forehead and round-faced Polish countenance stare out at me each day from a wall-sized bulletin board of precious life's memories posted in my synagogue office here at Shirat Hayam. For the better part of this past decade, I have endeavored to fulfill a sacrosanct private promise to Eliezer's blessed memory by shepherding the construction of ACBHM, the Atlantic City Boardwalk Holocaust Memorial, on whose foundation base will be prominently engraved the admonition, "Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it." Stockton University has invited us to locate ACBHM at its new campus on the Atlantic City Boardwalk. Along with the stirring endorsement of Governor Murphy, Atlantic City's municipal government, our local interfaith clergy, as well as Jerusalem's Yad Vashem. And now that CRDA, the Casino Reinvestment Development Authority, has pledged to pay for fully half the construction costs, this is truly a clarion teaching moment for our own Jewish community, as well as all Americans of goodwill. At this grievous time of murderous religious and racial violence, your volunteer assistance, Yiddische Kinder, is welcomed with open arms to help actualize our noble ACBHM enterprise as an enduring, universal, symbolic message promoting human tolerance, remembrance, strength, and hope. I know we can and will be up to this sacred task. Amen.
We are 6 million people, not for him to put out the border. I agree.
As we remember the deaths of our 11 million brothers and sisters, we honor and memorialize them all, Jews and Gentiles, and others who were victims, martyrs, and heroes.
We honor those who died because they were Jews. We honor those who died because they helped Jews, those who died because they resisted the Nazis, and those who died because of their ideals and convictions.
We honor those who were tortured, impoverished, dehumanized, deported, enslaved, and murdered.
They were murdered while the world was silent. They were murdered while the world pretended not to notice. They were murdered, most, but not all. There were survivors.
There are survivors of the Holocaust. We know them. They are the parents whose children are gone, and they are the children without parents.
We know them. They are the remnants. No brothers, no sisters, no aunts, no uncles, no grandparents, no cousins, no neighbors, no friends.
Holocaust survivors, because they are a part of us. They belong to us. We are all members of the same family, haunted by our shared memories. So many were begrudged their very right to exist, and were robbed of the gifts they were given to humanity. We mourn the blameless murder, the old and the young. We hallow the memory of our martyrs.
For these do I weep, and for the millions crowded in ghettos and in detention camps, for those wandering in forests, and those hidden in attics and in the underground bunkers, for those who found refuge in the bosom of another faith, or who lost their God, for those who were given over to experiments at the hands of wild beasts called doctors and scientists, for those who died of hunger and of thirst, smothered to death in freight trains or in gas chambers, shot, buried alive, or cremated, for those who were brought out to be killed by hanging so that they would be seen, and for those who sanctified God's name in the name of the people Israel, refusing to be subdued, fighting to the death, for those who lost their homes, their dignity, and their hope, and for those left alive to live the horror anew, day after day, moment after moment. For these do I weep, for infants who never learned to say mommy, for boys and girls whose youth was stolen from them, who withered before coming to blossom, for young men and women who never were blessed beneath the wedding canopy, for the elderly denied the privilege of a gracious old age, for the orchestras and for the music, and for all the world's beauty whose rainbow of colors was lost, replaced by only brown and gray and black. For all these do I weep.
You know, 74 years ago this month, Dachau and Birkenau were liberated. 74 years ago. The liberating troops who entered into the camp could not believe what they saw. They immediately sent for General Eisenhower. For those of you who don't know, General Eisenhower was the supreme Allied commander of all Allied forces in the European theater. He came, and what I'm about to read to you is part of a letter that he wrote to his boss, George C. Marshall, who was Chief of Staff under Harry Truman. This is what he wrote. I have never felt able to describe my emotional reactions when I first came to face with indisputable evidence of Nazi brutality and ruthlessness, disregard for every shred of decency. I visited every nook and cranny of the camp. I felt it my duty to be in a position from then on to testify at first hand about these things that never grow up at home, the belief or assumption that the stories of Nazi brutality were propaganda. He wanted to make sure that those who said it didn't happen, there was proof that it did happen.
At this Yom HaShoah service, we'll be listening to the testimony of Holocaust survivor Laura Oberlender. Laura lived in a small town in the Ukraine, Tuchin. When World War II broke out in September 1939, Tuchin was annexed by the Soviet Union. There were about 3,000 Jews in Tuchin at that time. Laura was 7 years old when the German army launched a surprise attack against the Soviet Union in June 1941. Soon, the Jews in Tuchin were subjected to heavy anti-Jewish measures by many of their Ukrainian neighbors and the Nazi soldiers. In July of 1942, the Tuchin ghetto was built. Laura's family was forced to move into the ghetto. Laura and her mother were secretly taken out of the ghetto by a farmer, Pavlo Garazmchik. Pavlo resisted the actions of his neighbors and the German army, who were planning to relocate and eventually murder the remaining Jews of Tuchin. Laura's father went into hiding. He eventually was also saved by the farmer Pavlo. Laura, her mother, and father were saved and protected by Pablo and his family. Pavlo's family have all been recognized as righteous among the nations of Yad Vashem. They all risked their lives to save the Jewish family. Their neighbors from Tuchin, Pablo and his family, were leaders. They are role models for today's leaders. They resisted, and here stands this evening Laura Oberlender, who was saved by the leaders' roles during the Shoah.
Will the choir please make your way forward? Come forward.
Please rise.
תחת כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהרים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים לנשמות 6 מיליוני אחינו בני ישראל הקדושים והטהורים חללי השואה שנפלו בידי הרוצחים הנאצים ועוזריהם ונשפט דמם והשביעית בלזז בגן בלזן דחו מטהוזן מדנק סוביבור תרברלינקה ובגטאות של ביאליסטוק קרקוב לובלין מינסק ויליינו ורשה ובשאר מחנות השמד באירופה שנהגו ושנשחטו שנשרפו ושנחנקו על קידוש השם בעבור שאנו מתפללים בהר הסקרת נשמותיהם אנו ברחמים אז תירם בסתר כנפך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם אדוני הוא נחלתם בגן עדן תהא מנוחתם וינוחו בשלום על משכבותיהם ונאמר אמן.
O God, full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant perfect rest in your divine presence to all the souls of our holy and pure brethren who died at the hands of the murderers in the camps, Auschwitz, Birkenau, Belz, Bergen-Belsen, Dachau, Madnik, Mauthausen, Sobibor, Treblinka, and in the ghettos of Bialystok, Krakow, Lodz, Lvov, Lublin, Minsk, Vilna, and Warsaw, and the other death camps and ghettos in Europe, who were burnt alive, burnt, strangled, slaughtered for the sanctification of your name, and for whose souls we now pray. Master of mercy, envelop them in the shelter of your wings for eternity. May their souls thus be bound up in the bond of life, so that they may ever rest in peace. Now we all say, Amen.
Please remain standing.
We remember our brothers and sisters who perished because of man's inhumanity to man. We are grief-stricken, recalling those who, in their youth, in old age, were cut down by the vicious hands of evil. We turn to God and to one another for comfort as we mourn and for strength as we persevere. Through the ancient words of the mourner's Kaddish, sanctifying God's name, we affirm our bond with those we have lost. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'yemru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shmei dekudesha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Damiran be'alma v'yimru Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabbah min Shamaya. וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. Please be seated.
It is my pleasure this evening to introduce our speaker, Laura Oberlender. Laura is a Holocaust survivor and lives part-time half the year in Atlantic City. Listen carefully, please, as she tells her story. It's a difficult task for a Holocaust survivor. Retelling the sorrow is reliving the loss and reliving the horror. But despite this, Laura has chosen to be here this evening to pass on the lessons of the Shoah to the next generations. Laura was a witness, she lived through it, and now, by hearing her story, you become witnesses. It's your responsibility to remember her story and to tell it forward. This is why she's speaking here this evening, so that we all remember. Each year there are fewer Holocaust survivors, especially here at our Yom HaShoah commemoration. But I'm heartened to see that there are 4 rows in the audience that say, reserved for Oberlender. It means to me that all of these family and friends are going to relive and tell her story to the future. And I'm so pleased that you're all here this evening. In addition to the 2nd and 3rd generation and the rest of our community that cared to come out and to hear Laura's story and to tell it forward into the future. In the wake of the tragedy this week, it becomes even more important to listen and take action to prevent anti-Semitism and to prevent the prejudice which is growing by leaps and bounds, not just around the world, but in our own backyards. Thank you, Laura, for having the strength to be here this evening to come and tell your story.
First of all, I want to thank you all for inviting me here this evening. It's the first time that I'm speaking in front of such a large crowd, so please bear with me because I'm a little nervous. I'd like to start by introducing my family. My daughter Randy, my son-in-law Dan, my daughter Susan, and my son-in-law Mark, and my granddaughters, Alexis, Samantha, and Nicole. My son, Stephen, and daughter-in-law, Nancy, and my granddaughter, Isabel. My brother, Michael, and my sister-in-law, Rachel, who I love like a sister. They traveled from Dallas to be here with me tonight. Thank you. Now I'd like to ask you something. Please raise your hand if you have a dog or a cat. Please raise your hand if you think your dog or cat would protect you if you were in danger. I ask you this question because a dog helped save my family in the war. My story begins in Tuchin, Poland, which is now Ukraine. We were a small, close-knit Jewish community. I was 7 years old, and my sister Hannah was 10. We had a beautiful life in Tuchin with many aunts, uncles, and cousins. My father built a beautiful home in 1939 and ran a very successful grain business where Ukrainian farmers shopped weekly. One of his customers was a poor farmer named Pavlo Gavasimchuk. My father frequently gave him grains on credit because he could not afford to buy them. That was the extent of their friendship. In 1941, the Germans invaded Tuchin. Jewish life changed forever. Communication was very poor, so we had no idea there were concentration camps and Jews were being murdered. The Ukrainians were very happy that the Germans occupied Tuchin, and within a week, many Ukrainians formed a pogrom with one German soldier. They passed by our house, and the German soldier stopped and said, "What about this house?" It was obvious that we were not on the pogrom list. They banged on our door. My mother rushed to the front door to keep them from waiting. When she opened the door, she was immediately bitten on her head with rifles and was thrown into the yard. My sister and I were standing in the door screaming and could hear her blood gushing from my mother's head. After they thought she was dead, they proceeded to enter our home. My sister pulled me away, and that is the last thing I remember. When I woke up, I was under my bed. I could hear my father calling my name. I tried to tell him where I was, but no words came out of my mouth. I was going in and out of consciousness for a period of time. I then remember waking up on the sofa with a Bible under my head. I was covered with a sheet. My father was crying. My uncle told him that I was dead and that they needed to help my mother. I thought I was going to be buried alive. In the following days, no one expected my mother or me to survive. My mother had 7 holes in her head and multiple fractures on her face. I was hit badly on my head, but instead of the blood coming out, It remained in my brain and caused severe swelling, which left me paralyzed on my right side. The swelling was so severe that I could not see or speak, but I could hear. My mother and I miraculously survived. To this day, my hand doesn't function properly. While we were recovering, Pablo came to visit us. He cried when he saw the condition I was in. Between 1941 and 1942, the Germans would come to our town demanding valuables. There were a few select Jews who were responsible for collecting what they demanded. They threatened to kill 50 Jews if their demands were not met. This lasted until the ghetto was formed in 1942. Once the ghetto was formed, we thought this was the end. My parents, sister, and I went to my grandmother's house, which was in the ghetto. As we were packing to move, a new Czechoslovakian principal arrived in town. He was searching for a home and was told that he and his wife could have any of the Jewish homes in Tuchin. He chose our home, as it was one of the nicest homes in our neighborhood. He came into our house and saw my sister Hannah, who had blonde hair and blue eyes. We all knew that the Jews would be killed within days. He told my parents that he and his wife would keep Hannah with them, as they had no children and they of their own. My parents said no. We moved into the ghetto and saw the chaos that was occurring there. My father decided we should try to escape and go to Pavlo's farm for safety. We were unsuccessful and taken back to the ghetto. At this point, my parents decided that maybe Hannah could be saved. My father took her back to the house and left her with the principal and his wife. They were kind people and promised to keep her safe. My father promised Hannah that we would come back for her if we survived the war. When my father returned to the ghetto, Pablo came with peasant clothes for my mother, my sister, and me. Unfortunately, my sister was already gone. He told my father that he could take us to his farm, but he couldn't safely take him too. We left with Pablo, leaving my father behind in the ghetto. The ghetto gates were closing the following day, so Hannah was planning to come one last time to say goodbye to the family. The gates closed sooner than expected, so my father had to escape in order to prevent Hannah from being caught. Many people were killed trying to escape, but my father was determined to try. By some miracle, he jumped over the fence and survived. He met Hannah before she left the house to come to see us. Hours after the escape from the ghetto, he saw the ghetto in flames. The Jews started the fire because the Ukrainians were surrounding the ghetto holding big sacks. They were waiting for the Jews to be killed so they could collect their valuables. Many Jews managed to escape into the woods, but unfortunately, they were all killed by the Ukrainians. My father told Hannah that he was secretly going to hide in a place beneath the steps of our house. He stayed there for 1 week, and Hannah kept him alive by bringing him a little bit of food whenever possible. After 1 week, he told Hannah that he was leaving and would try to get to Pablo's farm to be with my mother and me. When my father arrived 1 week later, the farmer hid us in the haystack outside on his farm. We were kept in the haystack for several weeks. There were many times the Germans came to his farm searching for Jews. They would poke long sticks into the haystack searching for hidden Jews. Pablo's dog Briscoe would bark very loud each time the Germans would come to the farm. I was afraid that I wouldn't have enough time to lace up my shoes if the Germans found us, so every time I heard Briscoe barking, I would start lacing up my shoes. Seeing that this was very dangerous, Pablo moved us into the barn, beneath a haystack. In the barn, there was very little light, which came in between the rafters. The light was gone by 3 o'clock each day, and then there was complete darkness. The space was so small that my father could not sit up straight, and if one wanted to turn, we all had to turn. Our constant companions were mice and lice. We never once changed our clothes or washed our face or hands during the time we spent there. I often saw a bird flying when I looked outside. I wanted to be that bird so that I could be free. When I would look outside between the rafters, I could see Pablo saying something to Briscoe. Briscoe would then run around an entire farm and come back to Pablo to let him know it was safe to approach us. Only then would Pablo come and bring us very little bit of food he could spare. Pablo had a wife and 3 children. By hiding us on his farm, he endangered their lives. He knew that if we were discovered, his family would be killed. He didn't fear for his own life, only for the lives of his wife and children. He intended to keep us on this farm for only a few weeks. Every couple of months, he would tell us that he could no longer risk his family's lives and that we would have to leave. He would take us out of the hidings and intending to send us away. And then he would look at me, pick me up, and cry and say, "What did this little girl do to deserve to die?" He knew that we would be killed immediately upon leaving his farm. He would then make up an excuse to say that it might snow tomorrow, so let's plan on leaving next week instead. This lasted for 18 long months. While we were in hiding, we often spoke how fortunate we were that Hannah was safe. It was a comfort to us to know that she was being taken care of. Little did we know that after only a few weeks, the principal and his wife threw her out of the house because the Germans threatened all people with death if caught hiding a Jew. After the war, we learned that she was going to Pablo's farm, but was killed by the Germans because a Gentile school friend shouted that she was a Jew. The last 6 weeks before liberation, the Germans made their camp on Pablo's farm and moved into the barn in which we were hiding. The soldiers were on top of the haystack in the barn, and we were hiding underneath them. I could hear them inhale their cigarettes. My father kept his hand over my mouth all day and night to prevent me from making a sound. In order to distract from any noise, Pablo convinced the Germans to bring their horses inside the barn. He also kept Briscoe outside the barn near where we were hiding. After liberation, Pablo continued to keep us hiding because the Ukrainians were still killing Jews, despite the Germans being long gone. When we first went into hiding at Pablo's farm, my father gave Pablo my mother's gold watch. Before we left his farm, after liberation, Pablo returned the watch to my father. My father begged him to keep the watch, but Pablo refused. Had we filled his house with gold to keep us, it only would have been returned. He kept us because of the wonderful, kind, selfless person that he was. From that day on, we referred to Pablo as our God. After liberation, we went back to Tuchin, stayed there for 7 months. From Tuchin, we traveled to Lodz. My father got in touch with the Brit Chayal. When we arrived in Lodz, the Brit Chayal were a Jewish men living in Palestine who wanted to fight the war against Hitler. At that time, Palestine was under British mandate. So in order for them to fight in the war, they joined the British Chayal, and known as the British soldiers. They succeeded in getting us Greek documentation so we could leave Poland. We headed to a displaced persons camp in Linz, Austria, which was called Bindermichel. After several months in Bindermichel, my parents gave me the best possible gift ever, my baby brother Michael. We spent 4 years in the DDP camp, and in January 1949, we immigrated to Philadelphia. Actually, I still refer to my brother, my baby brother, and he's over 6 feet. That's my story. The message that I want to leave you with is this. When you see injustice, please speak up. We all know that anti-Semitism is on the rise. It's important for all of us to fight hatred when we are exposed to it. Thank you so much.
On April 19, 1943, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising began. The ghetto fighters were able to resist for nearly 1 month. News of the resistance traveled to the Vilna Ghetto, where the Vilna poet and underground fighter Hirsch Glick wrote the Yiddish song Zak Net Kein Mol. The song became the anthem for the Jewish partisans.
Sag nicht kein Mal, als du gehst dem letzten Weg. Heute Himmeln beleiene, verstellen beleue Tag. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Schau. Sveta beugt an unser Trott, wir seinen da. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Schau. Sveta beugt an unser Trott, wir seinen da. Von grünem Palmenland bis weißem Land von Schnee. Wir kommen an mit unser Bein, mit unser Weh. Und wo gefallen ist, spritz von unser Blut. Sprotzen wird dort unser Gwure, unser Mut. Da sag nicht keinmal, als du gehst dem letzten Weg. Heute Himmeln beleien, verstellen beleue Tag. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Schau. Sveta beugt an unser Trott, wir seinen da. Wir seinen da. Wir seinen da. אנחנו פה.
Good evening. My name is Michael Emmett. I'm Laura's brother. Laura, I'm very proud of you. Laura's not a public speaker, and that was really hard for her to get through, and I'm so proud of you. Let me just say that Pavlo, the man that saved my family, I never met him. I met his two daughters, but I never met him. But I have a picture of him that's really incredibly touching, and that's he had a funeral after he died, and his casket was laid in front of the barn where my sister and parents were hidden. And he had said before he died that that's where he had to have his casket because what he did during the war guaranteed his entry to heaven. As I said, my name is Mike Emmett, but I was born at Michel Chomot in Binder Michel in 1945, October 45. And so I'm one of the older members of the second generation. I didn't, didn't experience the Holocaust personally, but like so many members of that generation, especially of my age, it's as though I lived it. I could feel it. I could taste it. I could smell it through my parents. And my wife, Rachel, her parents are both Holocaust survivors. They survived many work camps and concentration camps. And she, like me, experienced the Holocaust virtually firsthand. And you know, last week we celebrated Passover, Pesach, and Rachel and I traveled to Atlanta to celebrate a Seder with our daughter's family in Atlanta. And we sang the songs and said the prayers and talked about the plagues. And you know, it was incredibly meaningful, and yet I didn't really feel connected with those people. It was over 3,000 years ago, I guess 3,300 years ago. And as bitter as their existence was in Egypt, as horrible as things were, and the sons being murdered when they were born, it was so distant. And you know, I'm sure that for our generation, the second generation, the Holocaust is real. And for the third generation, it's a little further away. And for the fourth generation, it's going to be further. And it's inevitable as the years and the decades and millennia go by. It's going to fade and fade. We'll remember it, but it'll be like the Jews leaving Egypt. It'll be far away. And yet, it's mentioned several times tonight what happened, the horrible tragedy in San Diego, near San Diego this weekend. And for that family, for that horrible loss, it was like a personal Holocaust for that family. We talk about, the Talmud says that the saving of one life is like saving the entire universe. The killing of one life is like killing the entire universe. And as we go forward for generations and for millennia, it's critical that we do everything we can to fight anti-Semitism, racism, hatred. For whatever reason, God has instilled this in humanity. I don't know why, but I imagine it's going to continue. There's going to be an element of humanity that's going to hate people because they're not just like them or don't believe like them or look like them. And I think it's imperative that all of us stand up and fight as much as we can to prevent those people from gaining the upper hand. So thank you. Greetings from Texas.
We affirm our commitment to the State of Israel and to furtherance of Jewish life in our homeland.
Third generation, please rise.
We shall teach our children to preserve forever the uprooted Jewish spirit which could not be destroyed. We shall tell the world of the depths of which humanity can sink and the heights which are attained even in hell itself. We shall fight anti-Semitism and all forms of racial hatred by our dedication to freedom throughout the world. Pledge to remember.
Second generation, please rise.
We are the first generation born after the darkness. Through our parents' memories, words, and silence, we are linked to that annihilated Jewish existence whose echoes permeate our consciousness. We dedicate this pledge to you, our parents, who suffered and survived, to our grandparents who perished in the flames, to our vanished brothers and sisters, more than 1 million Jewish children so brutally murdered, to all 6 million whose unyielding spiritual and physical resistance, even in the camps and ghettos, exemplifies our people's commitment to life. We pledge to remember.
Survivors, if able, please rise. Everyone else remain standing.
We, the living survivors, entrust the legacy of the shower to you, our children and grandchildren, and all those who have come after the fire. We want you to know you both the sacred memory of our suffering and our martyrdom shall never be scorned or erased. The whole thing. We want you to recall the heroism of Jewish resistance. Remember the shining example of sacrifice and kindness from the righteous Gentiles. Remember the racial prejudice and discrimination that led to the Holocaust. By not forgetting, you will pay tribute to those who were destroyed. By not forgetting, you will ensure for those who live and those who are yet to be born that we intend never to allow such humanity to happen again. This is the heritage. We, the survivors, entrust to you custody for safekeeping for all generations to come.
We accept the obligation of this legacy.
Do I stay here or get up?
Right? You may be seated. A message, a teaching of Yom HaShoah. Yom HaShoah, its date determined by the Israeli Knesset, is forever linked with the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, where several thousand brave young men and women knew they were doomed to death, wanted to show themselves in the world that Jews do not die without fighting back. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising is forever linked with the Passover holiday, with Pesach. And Pesach is forever linked with the spirit of freedom. Another ghetto was the Kovna Ghetto, which had sages and scholars and deeply devoted and dedicated Jews. Knowing their situation, there came a question to a rabbi in the ghetto. Each morning we recite the words, "Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has not made me a slave. Shelo asani aved." How can we say these words in truth because we are truly slaves? Under worse condition than our ancient ancestors in Egypt. Are we allowed to say the words, "Blessed are you, O Lord God, who has not made me a slave"? And the rabbi answered, "Yes, you say it. Because the Nazis, the Germans, have enslaved our bodies, but not our souls. Our souls are free. We hope to survive, but we probably won't. But our legacy to those who will survive
is that they never enslaved our souls. They never enslaved our spirits, and our spirits are yet free. More recently, for 70 decades, Jews in what was once the home of most of the Jews of the world, Russia, when it was Soviet Russia, was liberated finally from communism. A rabbi from the West went to Russia to reacquaint Jews with their Jewish legacy, the Jewish heritage. A woman came to this rabbi and said, I was walking in the street and they called after me, Pachati Jid, a nasty word. And the rabbi said, I'm here quite a few months, and nobody ever called me in the street a Jid. The woman answered, you must understand. When you go with your kippah and your arbakafas and your Jewish appearance, the people who might criticize you know that when you say the word Jid, you accept it as a compliment. You are complimenting me called Jid, but they know that I feel insulted. The Jewish spirit, the Jewish soul is alive. We know that murderous anti-Semitism did not die with Hitler. We see it, we feel it, we read about it, and the world knows. But there is a major difference between now and then. Now there is a Jewish state which has changed the image of the Jew 180 degrees. And the Jew feels much more secure because there is a Jewish state. And also because we have the history of the Holocaust, those who died. We know what is possible. The reaction of the world to the murder of 11 Jews in Pittsburgh and a wonderful Jewish woman in California, and the other acts of anti-Semitism that are unreported in Europe, in this country, we know that the reaction of the world was far, far greater than the death of our 6 million brothers and sisters. God bless you for coming. Keep the spirit of Judaism flying high, and let's hope and pray when we reassemble next year, the world for our people and all people will be safer. God bless you, Laura. God bless you all. Amen.
with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet
Please remain standing. And please note what a community effort this evening is. The organizations listed in the back of the program have put resources of various types into making this evening as meaningful as it is, and we are grateful. Now, originally organized in response to the murders in Sri Lanka, but now with a renewed urgency, there is an interfaith prayer service in Atlantic City tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock at Our Lady's Star of the Sea. There are a few handouts in the back on your way out. You may take one, please. And on May 18th, Saturday night at Beth Israel in Northfield, there is a vigil to honor, to memorialize victims of violence and hatred. Good night.